As the nation prepares to celebrate 250 years since the Declaration of Independence, it's a reminder for some that this day did not bring freedom to all. I took a trip to the Gamble Plantation in Manatee County and followed up with a woman looking to see more of her story told at this site.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn.
At an Independence Day celebration nearly 175 years ago, Frederick Douglass gave some of his most famous words, words that juxtapose the nation's promise of liberty and justice for all, to the cruelty of the chains and shackles of slavery. Words that echo today in the heart of Manatee County.
My name is Chandra Bivens Carty, and one of my ancestors was enslaved at this plantation.
The Gamble Sugar Plantation. Its mansion is one of just a few still standing in the state. U.S. Census slave schedules show at one point as many as 190 African Americans were enslaved at this very site.
There are a lot of people that have stayed here that are left out, that aren't part of the story. 43 slaves brought to Gamble's plantation from Leon County.
Their names, like the man married to Carty's great-great-grandmother, etched on paper in a small gallery display, a display disproportionate to their impact.
There is nothing being told or said about the sugar mill, the sugar plantation. And that's where all the enslaved people worked to allow Gamble to have the money to build this.
Diane Wallman, Associate Professor of Anthropology. I would say the entirety of any successes that we're seeing were, because of the enslaved population. So here is for example, a bone button that would have been on a shirt.
Diane Wallman has spent years studying the Gamble Plantation.
And this would have just fallen off somebody's shirt.
Taking on archaeological digs to better understand the site and its history.
It's not an easy history to talk about, but it's a necessary part of history to talk about.
The wealth generated by slavery.
We took a trip to the Smithsonian in our nation's capital, which explores how hundreds of years of free labor built generational wealth for whites and created many of the racial disparities we see today.
Our success, our freedoms now, relied on the bodies, the life, and the labor of enslaved African Americans.
And right now at Gamble, a history Carty says leaves those like her out.
The enslaved people provided the labor for him to sell the sugar, make the money to build this. When it failed, so did the plantation. All interconnected. And now let's tell the entire story.
The only way to do that is to understand our past and to really reckon with it, even if it's hard, even if it's, challenging.
How do we do that?
I mean, we tell stories. We tell the stories of the people who lived at these sites. We can do that by excavating material culture as archaeologists. We can dig a place and a house that enslaved labor used to live in, and we can, look at the things that they use day to day and tell a little bit about the life of that person.
Something Wallman has tried, but 10 Investigates got copies of emails that show the Manatee County School District blocked Wallman's research team from accessing a school property that now sits where slave quarters might have been, citing, quote, other concerns that prevent the district from honoring your request. Today, the plantation is a state park, and 10 Investigates reviewed a state law going back 100 years that says the site must remain a dedicated Confederate monument.
If you walk around the site, the interpretation does not reflect the majority population who is actually living and working and dying on this site.
Interpretation Carty is determined to change.
Everybody wants their stories told and heard. I promised my mother when she died, I wouldn't forget Bradenton, and I wouldn't forget her family story. That was a promise I made her on her deathbed. I have to live up to that promise.
And Cardi says she's tried to work with the park to apply for federal grants to tell a more complete story, but hasn't had success. We did reach out to the Department of Environmental Protection, which oversees state parks, and we're waiting to hear back on our request for comment. You can watch that story and more tonight in our 10 Tampa Bay News special, Red, White, and You. It's a 1-hour special telling the story of our nation through the people of Tampa Bay who shape it every day. Watch it tonight at 8 right here on the 10 Tampa Bay News app.